What if Pokemon could never evolve? What if they were always in their first stage? Or in other words, what if they were all just babies? Today we'll be playing as Togepi, the signature baby Pokemon, and we'll be playing through Generation 1, specifically Pokemon Red. I made this ROM hack to remove all evolved Pokemon in the entire run, so we're only going to see first stage, probably fairly weak Pokemon for the most part. That's really important because Togepi's base stats are kind of awful. It only has 20 attack and 40 special. It does have higher defense and special defense in Generation 2, but I used its special attack as its stat today. This thing was obviously intended to be not very hard hitting, just more defensive and cute, really, overall. One problem though with Togepi is it only starts with Growl, so we're going to for sure lose the lab battle, as well as have a little bit of a hard time even getting to our first level up move, which is Metronome at level 7. In order to do this, I have to spam out all of Growl in the forest against either Metapod or Kakuna, after which I can finally get Metronome, but it's still not that consistent. Even in battles against a level 9 Weedle, I can often lose, especially if I get poisoned, because I just don't have reliable damage. If you go back and check out my Metronome only playthrough with Clefairy, you'll see how bad Metronome can really be. I can struggle through the forest and get to Pewter City, where we can finally get some training outside of the city and actually find a Pidgey. I was specifically training here because we would see a lot of Pidgeys, and I knew that with Metronome my damage was very inconsistent, so I might knock them out or do no damage, and it's kind of hard to know what will happen. Luckily we catch this one and we can name it Master. Thank you Hitmod Master for commenting and watching the videos, you're awesome. I tried to train up in the grass as much as I can. I think I need at least level 10 to have reliable-ish damage with Metronome as long as I get the right type of move. But all bets are off with Metronome because sometimes you can just get Explosion, like what happens here. And that takes me back and I have to retrain again to get that level 9 at least, at which point I give up and go to Brock just to see what my damage would be with a water or grass move if I got lucky. Training is just so inconsistent and takes so long with Metronome that really, with good luck with Metronome, you'd be fine getting past Brock. And this is eventually what happens. When I get lucky and get Petal Dance, I can do incredible damage with that 4 times super effective damage. Togepi can finally get past this rock hard trainer and we can get on to the next route. As this ROM hack goes, the late game is going to be very different, but this early game is fairly similar to what a base game would be. So this really shows Togepi's struggles. And the main struggle is its moveset. I mean, its stats aren't great, but we could get around that in Gen 1. Luckily, in Mount Moon, we have 2 important TMs that are going to greatly improve Togepi, and that's Water Gun and Mega Punch. Now, I had to take some inspiration from Togepi's moveset. Obviously, it doesn't have a Gen 1 learn set for me to use, but looking at the moves it learns in Gen 2 and 3, including Water Pulse and Return, things like that, I figured that these would be moves that it would have gotten in Gen 1. Water Gun and Bubble Beam, Mega Punch, Takedown, probably not Body Slam. That move wasn't given to a lot of Pokemon like the birds or small Pokemon, so I don't think it's going to be a good fit for Togepi, unfortunately. We can wander around the cave until we can finally catch a Paris. I got weirdly bad luck trying to find one this time. I named this Adam. Thank you for joining the livestream, Adam. You're awesome. If you want to catch that VOD that I still have up, go ahead and jump over and check that out. And with that, we're on to Cerulean, and here we finally see our first changes to this ROM hack. Instead of a Pidgeotto, the rival has a Pidgey, which doesn't actually solve any problems for us really. Togepi's stats are pretty bad, and this Pidgey still has Sand Attack, which is the main problem with the Pidgeotto anyway. It can stack it up, and by the time I get to the end of his team, I just can't do anything, and I just slowly get taken out by Squirtle, unfortunately. Even if the Pokemon aren't evolved, accuracy debuffs like Sand Attack are still incredibly strong. When I go back in, luckily Mega Punch has Stab and can do decent damage. Obviously Togepi's attack stat is abysmal, but one good improvement we have to our moveset as well is Sweet Kiss. So I added this move to Gen 1 because it is kind of a signature move of Togepi at this point. At level 18 in Gen 2 it learns this move, and it's very different than Lovely Kiss or any of the confusion moves that exist in Gen 1, so I thought it was very important to add. After we beat the rival and we can take out all the trainers on Nugget Bridge with a couple of accidental resets just because Togepi isn't great, we can pick up Thunder Wave. Now this actually pairs very well with Sweet Kiss, and I added this TM to its learn set because of moves like Zap Cannon that it can learn in later generations, but that combination of Paralysis and Confusion can be really handy, and it's immediately going to be so in Misty's fight. This is another one of our modified battles. I didn't want to have duplicate Pokemon as much as possible for the gym leader fights, so what I did is I changed out some of the other Pokemon, like Staryu in this case, for Horsey, which is another one that Misty probably would have had. Unfortunately, they still have the same levels, meaning Staryu still does good damage with Bubble Beam. Luckily, that Thunder Wave and Confusion combination can really mess up how consistent her Pokemon are, and cut their speed as well, which is really useful because Togepi is actually very slow. With that, we can take the win against Misty and we can get on to the SS Anne. Bubble Beam is an awesome addition to our moveset as well to help with the battles that are required on the ship, and then we can fight the rival again. Now this time he leads with a Pidgey, and then a Rattata. Obviously this is starting to really change the dynamics of his team as far as which Pokemon are the most powerful. Unfortunately he has that Abra, which he will have for probably the majority of the playthrough, and Abra is a huge downgrade from Kadabra. But it's a nice break for Togepi, and we can get the win and watch the SS Anne sail off into the distance. At which point we can look at the clock and realize Togepi's taking a while to get through this game, and this is why I wanted to give a special ROM hack to Togepi. Maybe eventually I will do a solo run with it, but I just don't think it's going to be that good in Gen 1. It would really struggle. But with that, we can head over to Surge, and we can see that his team is a little bit different since he's not going to have a Raichu. He will instead have a Magnemite added to his team and then Pikachu. Obviously these are the signature electric types for Gen 1, so I figured he should just have all of them. Thunder Wave can affect electric type Pokemon in Gen 1, and Sweet Kiss can make Pikachu less consistent because Thunder Shock and Thunderbolt do incredible damage against Togepi. Even without being a Raichu, his Pikachu can be really dangerous still with that move. And with that we can head toward Rock Tunnel. And here we're going to have to fight the Rapping Lass, which she doesn't have any evolved Pokemon normally, but her team isn't problematic because of their stats, it's because of their status conditions. Luckily in this battle, Togepi gets insanely lucky and it can dodge Stun Spore not once, but twice. That means that the Bellsprouts can't get Wrap set up and we can actually get through this without a reset, which Togepi has enough of already, let's be honest. I'm about to leave Rock Tunnel and we get caught by this junior trainer right at the end that actually takes Togepi out. Togepi's low base stats make it really vulnerable to get taken out on just a stray critical hit or something that does any status or decent damage. It can really stack up quickly for the little Togepi. But because of that, we gotta go back to the self-destructing Hiker who has 3 Geodudes today instead of a Graveler, but those are easy with Bubble Beam. Once we're out of the tunnel, I can get over to Celadon City and fight this Rocket, as well as clear out all of the items and pick up the important things here in the Rocket hideout before I head over to the department store. On top of the vitamins that I would normally get to boost Togepi's special, since we're using mostly special moves today, I also can pick up one important TM, and that is Tri Attack. I added this move to Togepi's Learn Set because other Pokemon like Clefairy have it when they have a lot of special moves they can use, so I figured it was a good fit for Togepi. Since we don't get Body Slam, this will probably be our best normal type move that we could use that doesn't cause recoil damage, because Togepi's HP stat is very low. We don't want to have to rely on anything that does recoil. But now we can return to Lavender Town and fight the rival in the Pokemon Tower. We also picked up Psychic on the way here, so now Togepi's moveset is Tri Attack, Bubble Beam, Psychic, and Sweet Kiss. It's a decent set for coverage. One big problem though is that we don't really have anything for grass types, especially for Execute. Execute is a Psychic and Grass type, so it's going to resist both Psychic and Bubble Beam. Luckily, I do have an answer for that later in the game. After we've cleared the Pokemon Tower, I can head over to Celadon and actually take on the Gym Challenge. Erica today has a slightly different team. She has a Bellsprout instead of a Weepinbell and a Bulbasaur instead of a Tangela. I wanted to add a couple of starters to these gym leaders' teams just because I feel that they're so iconic for first stage Pokemon, and they're really cute, so I think that they really belong here. After we take out Erica, I can clear the bike route and head over to Saffron City. From here, Togepi has to take out some trainers in Sylph Company and get to the rival. Now that we're in the mid-game, we're seeing a lot more Pokemon that should be evolved, like this Machop should be a Machoke, and that is helping Togepi to some extent. But the other problem that I didn't really realize in making this ROM that changes the strategy somewhat is that unevolved Pokemon give less experience. So Togepi has to train more in order to get to the level it needs to be at to even match the rival's team as well as other major battles. The rival's team is now looking quite different. He still has Pidgey instead of Pidgeotto, but now he has a Growlithe. And this may be an issue later because Growlithe actually has a better learn set than Arcanine does. This was a move I was very surprised to see on its learn sets in later generations. I don't know exactly how it shoots Fire Blasts, but I think it's going to be a really good answer for these Executes. Squirtle also does decent damage to us, and in this fight in Sylph, we actually get so close to losing. We get down to 1 HP, and this Squirtle just luckily hits itself enough times to take itself out, and that was really, really clutch for Togepi. With the rival defeated, we can pick up Lapras, and I made a mistake. I didn't give a nickname to Lapras. So since this is not a solo run, I will go and add that name, so we'll catch that name later. But thank you everybody for liking and subscribing. Thank you so much for the support on these videos. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more solo runs and Pokemon ROM hacks, Make sure to subscribe. We have weekly videos as well as shorts. I'd love to see you join. Giovanni isn't that much of a threat. He does have a Kangaskhan though still, which maybe isn't a baby Pokemon, but it's carrying a baby Pokemon, so I think it counts, right? It is a little bit strong, but luckily Rhyhorn and the Nidos just are not that big of an issue since they're not evolved. After that, we fly over to Lavender where we have the Name Raider. This guy probably doesn't make appearances on a lot of YouTube challenges and things. I wanted to fix the nickname here. I wanted to always try to name these Pokemon after subscribers. So Emily, you get Lapras today. I'm glad that I got you in here. Thank you so much for watching and commenting. You're awesome. But with that, we're ready for Koga. We're halfway through the gym battles, and from here, we're going to see some very different teams. For Koga, he has a bunch of mono poison types normally in Red version: Grimer, Muck, Wheezing, and Coughing. But for today, I didn't want him to just have repeats, so I gave him a Venonat in homage to his yellow version team. He still has a Grimer, of course, but after those two, I gave him a very unique Pokemon. I gave him a Tentacool. I felt like this was an interesting addition to his team since he's right here on like this little bay area where you can find a lot of Tentacool. So I felt like as another poison type Pokemon that has solid poison moves, it could be a good addition to his team. After Koga, it's Sabrina's turn, and her team would normally be a couple of Abras and a Mr. Mime. Now Mr. Mime is not cute. It's not a baby Pokemon. It is awful. So that is not invited today. She will have an Abra, of course, but I also gave her a Slowpoke since a lot of other psychic trainers in her gym have Slowbros. It felt like a good fit, as well as a Drowsy. Now, not the cutest Pokemon, but it is a first stage, so I guess it does technically count. However, I didn't really think through Drowsy's moveset here. Meditate plus Headbutt is actually a really solid combination, and Poison Gas, while inaccurate, could be a problem as well if I have to take too many turns to take it out. So while Togepi gets a loss here, we can go back in and we can do a little bit better this time. Togepi's moveset hasn't had an upgrade in a minute, so it's getting a little bit stale as far as having good options against her team. Psychic types obviously resist Psychic, and Bubble Beam, because it's a special move against these Pokemon with high special, probably isn't a good option. So Tri-Attack is getting a lot of use here. I didn't mention the Venonat before, but this also is on her team in Red version. She has a Venomoth instead of Koga having them, so she got one too, just for good measure. Once we can take out that Drowsy though, we can finally beat her and we can move on to the last two gym battles. So that leads us to Blaine, and his team is also a little bit different than normal. So he starts with a Vulpix, which he doesn't actually have in Red version. Only in Yellow, I believe, does he have a Ninetales, but it was a great option for him. Plus the red and blue sprite for Vulpix is just adorable. So it's a great candidate here for our baby Pokemon run. On the first run though, Growlithe takes us out with a Fire Blast. It does still hit pretty hard even though it's not evolved. But with some luck, Togepi should have this. We're a good enough level to take on his team at this point, and he likes to spam Super Potions for no reason. Which I don't know why, but Blaine in Red version has this issue. He just likes those potions so much, even if his Pokemon are full health. Not sure why. That Charmander is a fun addition to his team as well. He gets another starter because we could not have this playthrough without all three of those cute little starters. With enough luck against that Growlithe, we can take it out and we can get the 7th badge and we can get ready for Giovanni's gym. I'll teach Fire Blast in the place of Sweet Kiss at this point. We haven't been using it as much. It both has only 75% accuracy, and Confusion is only 50-50 chances of actually being useful each turn. Obviously half the time you can still move even with Confusion, so it's not the most consistent way to inflict a status. Giovanni's team is now massively different. He does still lead with a Rhyhorn, which is pretty normal I guess, but then he has a Diglett instead of a Dugtrio. So while it still has Earthquake and Slash, it doesn't have a lot of HP or defense, and Togepi can actually take it out pretty easily. The Nidos are a huge downgrade for him from the Nido King and Nido Queen, but their moveset honestly might be equally good, maybe even better, just because those Nidos don't have great moves in Red. Once we take out that final Rhyhorn, we get the 8th gym badge, and we can head off to fight the rival on Route 22 before the league. Now we have that Pidgey again, but luckily no more Sand Attack, so that's nice. We have Bubble Beam as well for the Rhyhorn, which is 4 times damage and decently good with Togepi's mediocre special, I guess. It works well enough. We can also use that against the Growlithe. We obviously don't really want to use it on the Execute though, but we have Fire Blast for that. So actually that becomes much easier now. Abra is just a one-hit with Tri-Attack. Even with that low attack stat from Togepi, they're just so fragile. And last up is Squirtle, and this was a little bit of a problem because it has a Hydro Pump and Skull Bash, which actually hit pretty hard. Granted, the accuracy on Hydro Pump isn't great, and the extra turn from Skull Bash makes it not super good, But Togepi's stats are still quite low at this point, even being level 50 now with some rare candies right before we go back in. Togepi's biggest problem really is its speed stat. It doesn't even outspeed the Squirtle, even with the speed badge boost from Koga. So that's really kind of sad. Luckily, its defense is pretty good though, so it can take somewhat of a hit now, but its HP is still not great. Poor Togepi would really struggle against evolved Pokemon. Togepi does take the win here against the rival, but that means we have the 5 hardest battles in the game to go. I will pick up one important item here before we head to Lorelei, and that is the TM for Solar Beam. Togepi can actually learn this, as well as Sunny Day in Gen 2, which I'm a little bit surprised by, having Fire Blast, Solar Beam, and Sunny Day. That's actually a decent set for Gen 2, but it should be very helpful here against Lorelei. I used all but one of my rare candies to take Togepi up to level 55 before her battle, and her team is looking a little bit different today. She has a Seal, obviously, instead of a Dugong, and a Shelder instead of a Cloyster. She does have a couple of single-stage Pokemon after this Slowpoke, or Slowbro normally, but I didn't want to use Jinx or Lapras. Lapras is incredibly strong and doesn't really seem to fit this baby Pokemon theme, as well as Jinx being terrifying, but Krabby and Poliwag made much cuter additions to her team to replace those. Did you know that there's no Ice-type first-stage Pokemon in Gen 1? There are a couple single-stage Pokemon like Jinx and Lapras, but nothing that evolves that is Ice-type both before and after evolution. Really weird. Oh yeah, there's Bruno of course, but even for Togepi, it's not a hard battle at all. I even let him keep his Hitmonchan because its little punching gloves just can't really do anything, and there's not really a lot of fighting Pokemon options to use in Gen 1. But I did give him a Mankey and a Machop, and I'd let him keep his Onixes because he seems to love those things, but Solar Beam is really strong against them, so no issue here. We do have a problem though. Agatha turns out to be really good. I didn't expect to have such a problem with her. Nightshade does incredible damage, and obviously Confuse Ray can be a problem, but also Hypnosis and Dream Eater are very strong. So I get a lot of resets here at this battle. A total of 14 resets, I believe, just fighting her. Because what needs to happen is I need to knock out this first Ghastly without taking too much damage, or she needs to switch into the Zubat so I can take it out. I then need to hit my Psychics and not hit myself in confusion as much as possible, and hopefully not get put to sleep. I did replace Solar Beam with Rest just out of necessity for this battle. I think I'm going to regret that later when I fight the Squirtle on the Champions team, but I just had no other option at this point. Togepi was really struggling here, because the only thing I can use is Psychic. Tri-Attack is also our only stab damage that could be useful for Lance's team or the Champions team for those that Psychic won't be that good against. So I didn't want to give that up, but maybe I could have, I don't know. These Ghastly though, every single one is a problem. One of them has Toxic, the others have Hypnosis, they all have Nightshade. They're just really quite good against Togepi. Luckily we can finally make it through after 53 total resets in the run. Man, Togepi is struggling. If I had known that Agatha would be so hard, I would have leveled up even more. I didn't really think that part through, but leveling is also really hard without any evolved Pokemon, so there's pros and cons, I guess. We only have 2 battles left. The first is Lance, and he sends out a Magikarp. Of course, right? Gyarados unevolved as Magikarp. It is really funny to see this as Lance's lead. That is actually a pretty good sprite too. Look at the little cute guy. After that we have Dratini's, of course. We have a couple of them on his team just because that is his signature. I didn't want to take too many of them away because it felt right since he has so many Dragonairs and Dragonites on his team in every generation. He seems to love these things. An Aerodactyl was a little bit too strong and not cute at all. I figured I might as well replace it with something a little bit silly here at the end, a Farfetch'd, which still has Sword Stance and Fury Attack, so it actually could have knocked Togepi out with the right combination of those. Luckily it doesn't happen. The Hyper Beams on Dratini are actually quite good, but we can finally get the win, and we can head into the champion battle with 55 resets and almost 2 hours into the game. Togepi has struggled its way through the game, put in the effort, put in the sweat and tears. It has made it to the champion battle. Unfortunately, Growlithe, like I was mentioning before, has a better learn set than Arcanine. It actually has Flamethrower, when his Arcanine would only have Ember. So that actually might make up for the difference in stats. As well as Sky Attack on the Pidgey, he actually has some hard-hitting moves. Luckily, his Abra is not a problem at all, and with Rest, I can actually heal up here, which is a nice thing to have. Normally, the Alakazam is much more problematic than that. Rhyhorn really isn't too much of an issue, but I am missing Solar Beam here because I have to 3-hit it with Psychic. I thought it would take a little bit more damage from that, Luckily, the Growlithe will not use a flamethrower every time. It can use agility, and it can have a special drop from Psychic, and that actually makes it much easier as long as they happen at the right time. With that, we have Execute, which obviously Fire Blast is the best answer for, but it doesn't actually even go down in one hit. So try Attack as well to knock it out. And that leaves us Squirtle. And you can see me pause here as I ponder that I really wish I had Solar Beam still. That would have been really nice there. Luckily, with the Psychic and Tri Attack, we have enough damage to just make it through. And Togepi can get to the Hall of Fame. At just under 2 hours and a playtime of 5 hours and 24 minutes, Togepi has completed the Oops All Babies ROM hack of Generation 1. No evolutions, all first stage and baby Pokemon throughout the entire run. Good job, Togepi. This was a rough one, but it was kind of a trial run because maybe we should do this again in Gen 2 once I get that up and running. Let me know if you'd like to see that. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know of any ROM hack ideas or any fun challenges you'd like to see in the comments. I'll be trying to get some more of these hacks as well as maybe some other ROM hacks for live streams in the future. So if you want to see those, make sure to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a wonderful day.